Picture this. It's the year 1271. A young Venetian, just 17 years old, stands on the cusp of a journey that will reshape his life, and indeed, the very fabric of the world. His name? Marco Polo. And though he may not know it yet, his travels will become the stuff of legend, inspiring centuries of explorers and adventurers to come. And though he may not know it yet, his travels will become the stuff of legend, inspiring centuries of explorers and adventurers to come. But let's rewind for a moment. Who was this young man before his life became synonymous with exploration? Marco Polo was born in Venice in 1254 into a family of merchants. Think bustling canals, thriving markets, and a city alive with trade and opportunity. Marco's father, Niccolo, and uncle Maffeo were not your ordinary merchants. They were men of ambition, already well versed in the act of crossing borders and traversing unfamiliar lands. A trait, it seemed, that would pass on to Marco. His childhood wasn't without hardship, though. Marco's mother died when he was young, and for much of his early life, his father and uncle were absent, away on their first great trade expedition into the East. For a boy growing up in such a dynamic city, this absence planted two seeds: a longing for adventure and a yearning to connect with his family's extraordinary legacy. By the time Marco turned 17, Niccolo and Maffeo had returned to Venice, full of tales of the exotic lands they'd encountered, and with a most unusual invitation. They had received a summons from none other than Kublai Khan, the powerful ruler of the Mongol Empire and grandson of Genghis Khan. Their mission? To return to his court bearing gifts of knowledge, Christian missionaries, and olive oil as a symbol of goodwill. And this time Marco was to go with them. Go. It wasn't a decision made lightly. This was no quick jaunt across familiar borders, but a grueling multi-year pilgrimage through some of the most rugged terrains on the planet. Yet Marco leapt at the opportunity, leaving behind the canals of Venice for silk roads, vast deserts, and snow-capped mountain ranges. Their journey spanned well over 3 years, taking them across the Mediterranean, through the Middle East, across Persia, and into Central Asia. Try to imagine the world he saw: caravans brimming with silks and spices, towering minarets rising from bustling cities, and the raw, untamed beauty of lands he could hardly have imagined. What made Marco special wasn't just that he observed these wonders, but that he was able to describe them with a richness and clarity that burned them into the pages of history. At every step, Marco absorbed the culture, language, and customs of the lands they traversed, a sponge soaking up the essence of the world. But as grueling as the journey was, the real test awaited Marco when they arrived at Kublai Khan's court in China. Imagine his awe as he approached the grandeur of a ruler who presided over the largest contiguous empire the world had ever seen. The court was like stepping into another reality. Silk banners rippling in the breeze, golden thrones that gleamed in the sunlight, and advisors and nobles from every corner of the known world. Marco wasn't just another merchant to Kublai Khan. He was a young, curious mind capable of learning and understanding. Over the next 17 years, Marco became more than just a guest at the Khan's court. He became an integral part of it. He traveled through provinces few Europeans had ever set foot in, chronicling the treasures and marvels he witnessed. The paper money system of the Chinese, which was revolutionary in Europe at the time. The sparkling cities of the empire, like Hangzhou, which he described as the most beautiful and magnificent city in the world. And the intricate postal systems of the Mongols, which allowed for a network of communication across thousands of miles. But Marco's observations didn't stop at infrastructure and technology. He documented the diversity of cultures he encountered, the rituals, cuisines, and beliefs of people ranging from Chinese Taoists to the nomadic tribes of the Mongolian steppes. His writings reflected not just curiosity, but respect, a willingness to understand a world vastly different from his own. And yet, for all its splendor, Marco's life in the East was not without its challenges. The politics of court life were complex, and Marco had to navigate the shifting alliances, loyalties and dangers. Kublai Khan, though powerful, faced internal struggles as parts of his empire grew restless. By the time Marco left China in 1295, he had spent a quarter of his life immersed in the East. His return journey was equally harrowing, this time taking the sea route, which exposed the Polos to shipwreck, storms and disease. When Marco finally set foot back in Venice, he was almost unrecognizable, not just to his family, but to his homeland itself. Long gone was the young, idealistic teenager. In his place stood a man seasoned by the trials of the world and overflowing with stories that seemed too extraordinary to be real. But fate wasn't done with Marco Polo yet. Shortly after his return, Venice found itself at war with Genoa. Marco, loyal to his city, joined the Venetian fleet but was soon captured and imprisoned by the Genoese. It was in his cell that Marco met a man named Rustichello da Pisa, a writer of romances. Struck by Marco's tales of distant lands, Rustichello urged him to dictate his experiences, resulting in one of the most famous travelogues of all time, The Travels of Marco Polo. The book was a sensation, though not everyone believed Marco's account. To some, his stories were too fantastical: cities of gold, a vast empire ruled by merit, and ships that dwarfed anything in Europe. Yet, to others, it was an invitation, a call to adventure, and a glimpse of a broader world waiting to be explored. Marco Polo's legacy endures not just because of the breadth of his travels, but because of what they represented. Through his eyes, the fragmented world of the 13th century became interconnected. His accounts challenged Europe to expand its horizons, laying the groundwork for the age of exploration centuries later. When Marco passed away in 1324, he left behind a simple yet profound message recorded on his deathbed: "I have not told half of what I saw." A statement that reminds us, even today, that the world is vast, waiting for those brave enough to seek it out. Marco Polo wasn't just an explorer. He was a bridge, a link between cultures, a recorder of humanity's vast diversity, and a symbol of the power of curiosity. And though his body rests in Venice, his spirit continues to inspire dreamers, travelers, and storytellers across the globe.